was absolute pandemonium. Everywhere you look are military vehicles just bristling with weapons.
These things can get very, very nasty very quickly.
Turn off the camera.
Turn off the camera. For certain, something bad is about to happen.
They are so determined to not lose their revolution.
They all thought it was a good idea, even if it cost your life.
Freedom for Sudan.
Sudan is a beautiful country. It has an awful lot of oil and it could be really rich. It's just been mismanaged for a very long time. It's had many, many wars. It's had divisions of the country. But the corruption, basic outright stealing by the regime had made the economy tank completely. And so a sort of growing youth movement had begun with demonstrations specifically against the government of Omar al-Bashir. President Omar al-Bashir had been in charge of Sudan for 3 decades. He's an indicted war criminal. He's known for the horrific crimes that were carried out in Darfur, but he was considered pretty much by everyone as unshakable. I can't recall in recent times an uprising like this. People started taking to the streets. As soon as they did, there was a massive military crackdown, and many, many people were killed.
A lot of people thought that the protests would just be shut down after a week, maybe 2 weeks. People were shot and killed. It continued. People were injured. It continued. These pockets built and built and built, and the numbers swelled.
There was a sort of sense that the international community didn't give a damn about what was going on in Sudan, and it wasn't the case. We were under an awful lot of pressure from people we knew in the country to come out. Please come. You've got to come. It's like, we're trying. At every moment that we had almost got visas to go to the country, the security would intervene and just say no.
The country's very closed off. They were resistant to outside press.
The best you could hope for was social media.
It was really hard to watch this all unfolding from afar.
News came through, right, the military had taken over and Bashir, the president, is actually gone.
That was quite a moment, because then you think, right, things are really happening, things are changing now. But that's a very dodgy time to enter a country. Often these things can get very, very nasty very quickly.
The information came through, actually, it's possible we will be able to sort this out and that you need to get yourselves ready to go.
There's always that little knot of anxiousness that you have in your belly when you're going to somewhere like that could potentially turn dangerous.
As soon as you get off the plane, everywhere you look are military vehicles just bristling with weapons.
This wasn't a peacekeeping force. I mean, they were so heavily armed.
We don't know if they're supporting the demonstrators. We don't know if they're against the demonstrators.
You think to yourself, this is going to go one of 2 ways.
Your instinct is to start filming straight away, but these guys are everywhere. I started to very gingerly lift the camera up and try and sneak a few shots here and there and gauge the reaction.
You don't want to be detained by any part of military intelligence or any military in Sudan if you can seriously avoid it. You just have to go by your wits, I suppose, and experience, and hope not to be lifted just because you were actually filming.
Some people thought that after toppling Omar al-Bashir down, everything would go quiet, but it didn't.
We had one of the protest leaders, Mohammed Naji, in our vehicle with us. And so, his guys at the protest site, the demonstrators, the protesters, security allowed us through no problem.
But I did notice there was quite a lot of soldiers sort of standing around. One of them, we could see him start looking at us. I mean, Richie is definitely filming. Within a few seconds, a soldier comes over. For certain, something bad is about to happen.
They're all speaking in Arabic. I couldn't really tell what was going on, but it was very clear that he was not impressed with me having pointed the camera at him. I could sense Stuart, you know, is starting to get a bit tense.
And then he decides that he really has taken exception.
Hello?
And next thing, the back door opens, and this guy with a Kalashnikov across his chest is in and sat behind me.
He decides, well, he's going to take us to military intelligence, a place that if you normally go to, probably you'll come out of, if you're lucky, days later, maybe never at all. I mean, this was not a good place to go.
Once we were in the military HQ, there was a load of soldiers in this room, and still didn't know what was going on. But then I started to see the odd smile crack. And then you can feel the tension just going down. I was like, oh, right, I think we're going to be all right. Once they were satisfied with who we were and what we were doing, we were out and sent on our way.
Normally, that would have been a very, very long and difficult experience. You'd have been stuck inside and probably in an awful lot of trouble. So that was probably a really good indicator to us then, that things are actually different. Because that would never have happened just a few years before, a few weeks before, a few days before, maybe even a few hours before. That would never have happened. When we actually finally got into the protest square, I was like, wow, this is it. This is where the people are.
Everybody was high on life. And this crowd was just phenomenal.
And everywhere you looked, there were people, and sometimes they were in groups chatting, sometimes they were singing, sometimes just banging. This was a revolution that had success but hadn't ended. They wanted a change. They wanted to put their own people into government. They wanted the military to step down and to go away.
We were amongst the first foreign journalists to show up at the site, and people were like, are you journalists? Where are you from? I was like, oh, we're from England, we're from Sky News.
Sky News in England.
Oh, amazing, welcome, welcome. And they were slapping Stuart on the back and shaking Richie's hand.
It's selfie after selfie after selfie, and that was a brilliant moment.
You stop for pictures, people actually wanting to interview you, and not interview you, but just ask your opinion on things.
It was difficult to do your job because everybody wanted to come up and tell you about it.
We also have this thing where people are trying to help you, right? So they're trying to control the crowd. Well, before you know it, we're surrounded by people controlling us.
Everybody wanted their picture taken, so whenever I pointed my camera to get general shots, I would have a cluster of people instantly dive in front of me, and that shot would be just obliterated.
I remember there was one instance where I was actually trying to make quite a serious point about what was going on.
Well, the ups and downs of this revolution have been absolutely remarkable. A couple of days ago, you would have sworn that...
And people would be jumping in all over the place, and you had to keep restarting and restarting.
After that, a cabinet is going to be formed.
You could get overwhelmed quite easily while trying to speak, and nobody letting you think straight for you long enough.
Just keep well back.
I'd lose Stuart in the crowd. I couldn't hear him, you know, I just couldn't get the shot, and sometimes we just had to walk away, let it all calm down, work out what we were going to say, and then walk in again and then hit the button and go, right? And you're going to get one shot at it, and that was it, before the same thing happened again.
The ups and downs of this revolution have been quite remarkable. A couple of days ago, you'd have sworn...
And a militia who were the original Janjaweed, dancing and singing together.
I've only ever seen people really scared, not dancing with soldiers.
I didn't think it was possible that would happen, because in the past they'd been so scary and actually so ruthless and nasty.
So you never thought you would see this, right?
No.
Never?
Never. Not in my lifetime.
But always in the back of your mind, you don't know that that's going to stay like that.
It had only been a very short time period before, just a matter of weeks before this military was firing on its own people and killing them.
Gunmen had got themselves into positions on high-rise block that overlooked directly down into where the people were all gathering. The militia, who had been sort of surrounding the crowd, actually then started joining them and started firing back up at this building. And you can see the firefight taking place. I think that was a massive change. I think that was the one where you realised, okay, and probably when the military said, right, these people aren't going anywhere.
And all throughout the protest side, people would carry posters of the martyrs, as they called it, people who died.
And you'll see sort of shrines to them on the floor, and they're up on the railway bridge, which was the central focus of the protests.
We were still really interested in meeting the people who'd helped get their revolution to this point and their families. So I said to one of the guys we're working with, it would be really great to meet one of the families. And he said, yeah, you know, we need to do that because these people can't be forgotten.
So, how are you? Nice to meet you.
One family that we met was of a young boy, Abdulazim, who was killed by the regime. We were introduced to the sister, the brother, and the cousin.
It's difficult. You always have to remember that these people are going through probably one of the worst times in their life, and they're allowing you into that moment, to share it with them. What we do, its very nature is intrusive. You need to work quickly, you need to work sensitively.
Yeah, what would you say to your brother now?
يوم الاستشهاد شفته بالليل من أول ما يعني نزل في ساعة نزل في السوشيال ميديا شفته على طول ففي اللحظة دي حسيت بألم كبير جدا وبالخوف رهيب.
They had a video clip of the moment that Abdulazim was killed.
They said they had never watched the video.
And he had face down the Sudanese military unarmed.
الحاصل ولكن ربنا طبعا بدل لي من استشهاده لكن السودان يعني الحقيقه اللي حصلت يستاهل الناس تضحي بنفسها بارواحها من اجل السودان. السودان يعني وطن غالي بالنسبه لنا نحن بنحب السودان فلازم كان الناس تضحي بكل ما تملك.
But not one of them thought that the loss of Abdulazim was a loss. It was his death was worth the revolution. But it explained everything. That's why this could win. This is why it could be a success, because they all thought it was a good idea, even if it cost your lives. And that was very emotional, I think, for everyone. To see the younger generation coming up to support the revolution is remarkable. It's a youth revolution. One night in particular, people had come fully expecting to have the names of the new government read out to them.
And people were like, tonight's the night, this is so exciting.
Should be in government.
This is the democracy that we are seeking.
Atmosphere is thousands and thousands of people crammed.
You looked around you and it was absolute pandemonium.
I was struggling to see at one stage, and these guys who had clearly been there for hours were standing on these plastic chairs just through the crowd, and everybody was parting for me and my plastic chair so that I could get the shots. It was great.
You could see that it was taking an awful long time for these people to come forward. You could see that there were little huddled groups on the main stage. And then the sort of addresses to the crowd became more like, we have to stay on the streets, we have to keep fighting for the revolution, that things aren't going absolutely perfectly.
The military doesn't want to give it to civilians.
So you're worried that this is,
yes,
it looks good, but it's not there yet.
Yeah, exactly.
It was pretty amazing how quickly it switched, actually.
We eventually sort of extracted ourselves from the crowd. We're heading back to the hotel, and the